Hello, students. Welcome to History 2010. I'm Dr. Sawyer, and I'll be your professor for today, hopefully for the rest of the semester. Well, it seems like computers tried to make that not happen, but we're not going to stand down. All right, look. So, yeah, my computer just died in the middle of that lecture that I was just giving. So I'm going to report here on what I talked about. All right. So consider this to be like a news report about what happened and what I was talking about when my computer died in the middle of that lecture. Good news. We've got live footage from the scene of the second half of the lecture. So if you just stick with me here in this emergency report on the lecture that I gave. All right. So this isn't the lecture. Well, it is a lecture. It's a lecture that's a report about a lecture that I gave that got destroyed. So here we go. Labor Day, that was this week. You guys had Monday off. That means I'm pushing the quiz back. So the quiz this week won't be due until Sunday. So that's fantastic. There will be a Wednesday lecture this week. I don't know why the slide just says there'll be a Wednesday lecture this week too. I didn't even notice that when I gave the first lecture. And just to be clear, some people will probably tell you that that slide, when they saw it in real time, said Memorial Day weekend. Don't listen to them, all right? The only mistake in this slide is the sentence that just ends right there. So anyway, the detailed weekly rundown of with the reading links and everything, that is already up for you guys, so check that out. I'm aware that the Drinking in Colonial America link is not working right now, but we'll get that fixed, or we'll get that sorted out somehow. So stand by for that. I was going to fix that right now, but instead I'm doing this live report on the lecture. I mean, this is a lecture on the live. Anyway, you guys get what I'm saying. The next discussion sessions will not be this week. They will be next week, Thursday and Friday, depending on when your section is. But just letting you guys know the heads up for that. So check your schedule. All the readings highlighted in blue are the ones we'll be talking about then. Fantastic. Okay. Last time we were talking about the beginning of English colonization in Roanoke. Anybody know? Can anybody tell me what happened to Roanoke? Anybody? Exactly. We don't know what happened. There's been some new information that came out, but we're not sure. That was actually first reported in this lecture earlier. If you guys didn't see it, this is all about that lecture. So the Spanish Armada, that's pretty important because it destroys a lot of the Spanish fleet. The Spanish fleet cannot dominate the Atlantic the way it had before. So that opens up room for the English and some other rascallions, some French and some Dutch. We'll get there. As we move on, just want to remind you guys of the big picture items here. What motives drive people? And we talked about this before. I think you guys should have it, but I just want to keep it in your head, okay? There are material motives, which are tangible things. On the other hand, there are ideological motives, religion, politics. Both of these play into it, but they both matter. All right. And even within colonies, right, these colonies are so different, but even within colonies, there are different groups and different interests at stake. So keep that in mind as we move forward and we talk about Roanoke, which is where we're going here. Now, the first question that I want you guys to think about is this. Okay. What would drive somebody to go to Jamestown? I know you guys are thinking, well, they'll get to be part of a successful colony. You don't know that. They don't know that. Here's what they know. All right, just keep this in mind. Here's what they're looking at, okay? Consider this. This is the type of ship that took the first English settlers across. It is 72 people going to be on this boat, 82 feet long. Think about that. You guys complaining about your roommates in your dorms. All right, there were 72 people packed on a boat that was 82 feet long. All right? Not fun. Now, to be fair, it is a 16th century ship. 16th century ship, probably a little nicer than your dorm rooms, but, cramped on there. So what would make you voluntarily do something this horrific? Now, let's keep some other things in mind. Like, for example, the shortest distance, and this is like modern estimations, almost 4,000 miles of straight line. They're not going to go in a straight line. They're going to go to the Canary Islands first. They're going to stop over places. There's thousands of miles. And so you guys are like, yeah, okay, but how fast were the boats? Did they go very fast? No, they didn't take the shortest route. They didn't even know how to get there. They also took 4.5 months. 4.5 months to get across there. And guys, that's the length of a semester almost. So these guys are basically going through what you're going through. But it's different. All right. I'm sitting here. You guys are like, oh, we get it. No, you don't. Okay. Because there's just so much stuff. Okay. Consider this. All right. You're going into pretty harsh conditions, right? Sounds like college. But what if every other person that had gone to your college before had either come back screaming about how horrible it was, or just the last freshman class disappeared? All right, that's what happened to Roanoke, and that's the last people that went to Jamestown. Are you going? Sounded like I wanted you to go, didn't it? Sounded like I was like, you guys going? No. So anyway, yeah, they don't know what happened. And this is on the cusp of land no one really knows about. So how do you get people to go? Well, Jamestown, which is the one that I was talking about there, this colony is the first successful one. Let me just lay it out for you, what's there. All right, so 1607, it's established by a company, joint stock company, they called it at the time. And what that is a lot like a corporation today. There was a lot of capital invested. There was a lot of required capital to start up a colony. So they allowed a bunch of people to pool their money together into this enterprise. What that did was it ensured that, there's a lot of risk. It's hard for a person to risk everything they have whenever they're wealthy of that capital class at the time. So this allows a lot of people to take a smaller risk, but potentially a large return. So that's how it works. It does not go well at first. Mostly it's people that think they're going to find gold. That's what the Spanish found. That's what people are hoping to find here at first. Turns out they don't really find gold for a long time. And so what they end up finding out is that whereas you cannot actually find gold, the source of wealth, which is going to be very, very lucrative, is tobacco. The thing with tobacco, though, is that you end up with a situation where, like gold, if there's gold, you go in, you get the gold, you leave. There's no need to stay there. If you guys have ever been to the Southwest, New Mexico, anything like that, all those ghost towns, that's what happens when people move there to get gold or other minerals. Instead here, what you have is agriculture. Agriculture requires that you set down roots. Okay, not plant roots. That too, but what I mean is it means you move there and you stay on the land. This is going to impact relations between the Europeans and the Native Americans because as more people come over, they're going to be seizing more land. They're going to be staying there. That's going to push further and further into Native American territory. Now, speaking of Native Americans, I just got to address something here, okay? I'm talking about Jamestown. A lot of you guys are probably thinking about Pocahontas. Some of you guys are probably, oh boy, Pocahontas, that's my favorite movie. Okay, that's fine. I don't care what your favorite movie is. First time I ever gave this lecture, though, I realized that was what I was up against, okay? I knew this, and it's funny because I had never seen Pocahontas before because I was like not of the demographic. I was too old to have watched it and have a kid at the point. But I know you guys, this is what I'm up against. You guys saw this. And I wasn't thinking about it. The first time I ever gave this lecture in a college classroom, I clicked the side where it even said Pocahontas, all right? And somebody went, Pocahontas! They just got very excited about Pocahontas. And I was like, this is weird because if you know much about Jamestown, it's going to be a while before there's anything to be particularly excited about. And this is what's in your head. This is what I'm up against right here. I'm up against this Disney documentary film, which was not at all factually based, all right? Yes, there was a Pocahontas. Yes, there was a John Smith. Yes, there was a talking raccoon who befriended everybody. But aside from that, well, not a talking raccoon. All right, you guys get it. All right, if raccoons come out during the day, don't go near them. All right, your dad was right. It's probably got rabies. They're not trying to be your friend, okay? So anyway, you saw this right here. So as a part of my commitment to educating you and also ruining your childhood, I wanted to show you something. All right, who's that? Pocahontas and John Smith? Actually, that's who it is. That's who it is. That's pictures of them. John Smith there on the left, Pocahontas there on the right. Those are like engravings of them. A little side note here. John Smith was a sailor. Okay? Sailor in the 16th, 17th century. Okay. Probably had scurvy a lot. Probably had scurvy. Probably had syphilis. Probably had a lot of diseases. All right? Scurvy makes your teeth fall out. Probably didn't have any teeth. Probably just had bleeding gums a lot from the problems that he had. Also, he was a full-on adult, and Pocahontas was a child. So lots of problems with that. I hope you guys will know better next time. than to believe in all of that. Pocahontas, on the other hand, Pocahontas was a child when they met, but Pocahontas was a baller. Pocahontas was brilliant. And it's really unfair. Like if your mom's ever been like, you're too good for him, all right, you just tell him about John Smith and Pocahontas, and you show him those pictures. And also, you know what else? Pocahontas was a real live action movie. We're waiting for them. They just do a new live action movie like Lion King, whatever. If they do a real live action movie, you guys, I want you to see the preview here. That's what it would look like. All right. Did I ruin your childhoods? Did I ruin your childhoods? Welcome to History 2010. Let's move on. So anyway, how do you get people to come to James? There it is again. There it is again. Just making sure you guys close your eyes. It snuck up on you. All right. Why do they have their clothes on? And why is that weirder than if they didn't have any clothes on at all? I don't understand. All right. So anyway, how do you get people to go to Jamestown? Well, there's a couple of ways, but the main appeal has to do with economics. Okay. So number one, if people had resources, and it's hard to get people with resources to go places like this, but if you have people that have the ability to farm and they have the ability to pay for themselves to go over there and get set up, one of the things they do is they give people stock in this company. Because what ends up happening is that you have a person who is invested in their own land, but a person who benefits from owning the stock if the overall colony works. So that kind of overlaps the interest there. The second thing you have is called the headright system. And the headright system, basically a headright is a 50 square acre plot of land. The people who own this company, or the people who head it, they say for every person that can come move there under their own resources, right, without help from the company, they move there. For every able-bodied man that can farm, 2 headrights, but for every member of their family they bring with them, it'll be an additional headright. That means if me and my wife and Solomon move there, I get 2 for me, then 1 for Kelly, and then 1 for Solomon. Now, if you guys know anything about Solomon, he's not very good at farming. He can barely even pull a plow. So why would they give a headright for me to bring a child? And if I had 6 children, why would they give me a headright for all of them? Well, when you have a colony that requires people stay there and farm, you need people to go and stay. Wait, I said that twice. Anyway, you get my point. You need people to set up and put down roots there. We're not doing that again. Put down roots. And so what you do is you say for every family member you bring there, there will be an additional headright. And now you've not only secured the current group of people over there, chances are those children will stay around and farm the land. So, smart there. Now, the majority of people, though, come early on are indentured servants. And this is a problem of needing people to work, because they need people to work. If you get, if I went over there and like I said, if I got 2 headrights and then 1 for Kelly and 1 for Solomon, somebody's going to need to help me with it. And it's not going to be Solomon. Let's face it, he's 5 years old. He distracts me from most things. It'll be harder to farm with him there than if he weren't there at all. But the thing is, you need people to work that land for a while. So England at this time is going through a pretty rough patch. The people are being forced off their lands. There's no jobs in the cities. So there are desperate people who will sign a contract. And the contract will say, if you go to the New World, then I will provide you, like say, okay, let's make this clear. I'm the person who owns the land that needs someone to work there. So I go in England and I say, hey, let's do it like this, okay? I'm like, hey, if you will come to the New World and work for me for like 5 years, then I'll pay for you to come over there, give you a place to live, and you'll be good and you'll be set up, right? And then after that, you can find your own land. But for the meantime, you got to work for me. And that's good because, I mean, look, I got in this situation where I took my children over there and I need some help. Parents need help, that's for sure. All right, so anyway, so that's me. I'm like, hey. And then the person that I go encounter is like, okay, I'll go over there with, and then that person will sign the contract and then they can get out of England and they can get some hope in their lives. And that's the deal. That's going to become a problem later, but we'll get there. So that's how you get people there. By and large, it's either stock in the company, land, or the hope that they can get some land later on after their contract runs out. Now, that's not to say that political incentives don't matter. They're there. All right. So, for example, people are guaranteed that they will have the full rights of Englishmen there, which means a right to some say in government. So that ends up playing a part. But the primary purpose, the focus, the reason that Jamestown exists is economic. That's your first colony. Well, not your first colony. We still haven't found that first one. It's the first colony that sticks around. And that is a really big part of colonization. So that was my report on the first portion of lecture. Very, very, very quickly done, and without the fantastic questions people asked, which I will answer in the next one. Thank you guys for listening. Now we turn back over to our regularly scheduled reporting, the lecture that did get recorded, and people at home, if you have children, just be prepared. The guy giving this lecture is very confused because his computer has just died on him, and he is now trying to recover what he can. He's having a hard time. He realizes that later on he's going to have to record a report about the lecture that he gave before this, and it's really hard. So thank you guys for being here. That was a very abbreviated lecture. I'll probably cover some of this a little bit more in depth in the next lecture we do. Thank you for being here. Good night. Yeah. Okay. These guys set out 1630, and they're led by this wealthy Puritan lawyer named John Winthrop. Let me tell you a little bit about these guys, okay? These are the ones, when people say that these folks came, audio's jacked up.
So are you saying that the Pilgrims were Jamestown and Massachusetts was Puritans?
No, there were no Pilgrims in Jamestown. The Pilgrims were in Plymouth Rock, right? Plymouth, which is in New England, but it's just to the south of where these guys land, right? Where the Puritans land. They're also religious dissenters in the same sense, but there's some big differences. I don't know that I need to get into the differences between them to necessarily explain, kind of answer the questions today. Basically, the Pilgrims were completely breaking away. This is a big thing about them. Pilgrims were like, we're done with England. We're building something different. When the Puritans come across, they're just as much inspired by faith. And I mean this, guys, I cannot tell you enough. In the 21st century, people are just too sure that Christianity is all the same thing, which is funny because I also have friends who are Baptists and I have friends who are Catholics. And I tell you what, I've been to both their churches, don't look a whole lot alike. They talk about the same dude, but they don't do anything else the same, as far as I can tell. But man, talk about religious difference. So these Puritans had the same sense of religious mission, but they didn't want to separate totally from England. And in fact, have you ever heard like the reference of like America is a city on a hill? You ever heard this? Ronald Reagan actually used that line in one of his speeches, a shining city on a hill. The original quote is city on a hill, right? This comes from the Puritans, from one of their leaders. And, on the ship in a ship coming across the ocean, right? A city on a hill. And Ronald Reagan added shining city on a hill because Reagan was a Hollywood guy. He had to have things all glitzy like that. But this comes from the Puritans, and this shapes the way they see the world. The Puritans imagine themselves as people who are coming across to show the world how to live right by the Bible. Just think about this, all right? This group of people, it's a relatively small group, right? 17 ships come in the first year. They believe that they themselves are going to show the rest of the world how to live. There is definitely a little faith inspiration here. It's not to say there's not wealth in it for them as well, right? The land, the deal they get there as a charter certainly matters. But these folks, let me just tell you about their lives. Because it's important, right? We say people came over here because they wanted to have religious freedom. I don't know if it was so much about religious freedom sometimes as it was the right to practice your religion just as strictly and intolerantly as people had done to you other places. The Puritans are a problem because they won't fall within the bounds of the church. Right? This is 1630. This is early on, right? They're not Catholics. They're like teetering on breaking away from England. They're their own thing. And here's what they believe. They believe in predestination. If you guys know what this is, it's the idea that since God knows everything, God has already decided who amongst us will be in heaven and who won't. Okay. Here's the thing with that. The number that they had was something like 144,000 seats. You probably heard that number before if you went to some of the churches. I mean, coming up, I heard that number before, right? It's your odds go down as more people are born, guys. I'm just saying. So just remember that. But they believed strictly in living as sin-free a life as possible. And this was a Puritan sin-free life. And what it meant was you lived your whole life knowing that no matter what you did, you could not be sure you were going to heaven. However, if you lived a certain way, you would definitely not get into the raffle for one of the 144,000 tickets, right? You slipped up. That was that. So these folks set up a government. It's called a theocracy. You guys know what a theocracy is? It's a state based on religion. I mean, today in the world, basically Iran, you have Iran, right? And, I would borderline say that maybe you could say North Korea was one of those. But, they don't have a Bible so much as they just have a crazy dude that spouts things off. My dad was born on a mountain out of lightning. Like that's North Korea's gospel right there. These guys are crazy. That dude. That like Kim Jong Un, his father, said he played golf one time in his life and got 15 holes in one, and that then he never played again. Yeah, that's interesting. Anyway, me too, buddy. Anyway, so it's basically faith. Right? It's based on, it doesn't have to be based on necessarily a leader, but just the idea that the faith is what underpins it. And in this case, the Puritans decide everything. It is a stressful life, friends. Stressful. There's a story of a woman in Massachusetts Bay who, under the pressure of feeling that she's like so worried that she's living so strictly, right? She doesn't know, and she feels the anxiety. She throws her newborn baby down a well and kills it. Because, she said, at least now I don't have to worry about it. I don't think that was a very good plan, honestly. I'm just going to say, now you don't have to worry about it. You're going to hell. I don't know. If you believe in it, you got to be kind of stressed out at that point. Part of me also just thinks maybe she didn't like that baby. That's possible. They scream a lot. I'm not sure what happened there. I'm just saying that it is, this is what they live under. And so they go through a lot of this process. And the thing is, these guys are not tolerant at all. A couple of people, they like get the idea. They're like, oh yeah, Massachusetts Bay, we can go there, right? Like they're cool. They understand what it's like to be repressed. Like Quakers go there. We'll talk about them here in a little bit. Quakers are like peaceful people. People hate them because they won't fight in wars for them. So they're not following what the king wants them to do. So some Quakers show up there. Whew, do not go there if you're a Quaker. I mean, it's bad enough if you're a Puritan there, but if you're anything else, it's nothing but trouble coming at you. The Puritans are violent too. And this is my favorite story about the Puritans, okay? Just to tell you, sometimes people can't see the forest for the trees. Okay, so at one point, some people come there who were not Puritans. They come from England, and they dare to challenge the Puritans' way of doing things. The Puritans are like, we would, one, like to get rid of this guy, but two, we'd like to let people know that people like him shouldn't come here anymore because we don't like them. So they take this guy and they cut his ears off and they send him back to England. Think about that. Two birds with one stone. Number one, you're like, well, I guess that guy learned a lesson. Number two, you telling me like you guys just graduated high school recently, right? And you guys have been out of high school 2-3 years ago. You ran into a friend at the store and like a grocery store or something. They had a rough couple of years and you notice it. You know what I'm saying? Like you're like, oh, hey, so you've been working out or something like that, right? You notice the changes that happen in people. This dude goes back to England. You don't think people are like, whoa, did you get a haircut or something? He's like, dude, I get it. I've got no ears. Also, I couldn't hear you because my ears got cut off. Actually, that's not how ears work. But you get my point, right? This is my favorite part about it. All right. I was reading this story and I was like, these guys read the Bible all the time, cutting people's ears off. Okay. For you guys who are familiar with the Bible, I can think of one story in the whole Bible where somebody's ear gets cut off. You guys know what I'm talking about? It's when they come to the Romans come to take Jesus, right? And I believe it's Peter, takes the sword, like they're going to get him, cuts the ear off of the soldier, right? And what's Jesus do? He goes, no. We don't do that, man. He puts it back on the soldier, right? That's a very specific example that Jesus might not be for cutting off ears. It's the one time it happens, Jesus is like, puts it back on. That's just me, though, okay? If only these Puritans had gone to church in the South. Too bad they're up north. This is their life now. And the crazy thing about it is this type of insanity, okay, that's not a fair way to say it. This type of stringent lifestyle is actually going to lead to all types of conflicts that have really interesting outcomes. The biggest one being the formation of new colonies. Because people come to Massachusetts Bay Colony, they don't fit in, and they bolt and set up new cities. Two examples here. A guy named Thomas Hooker, who was there early on. He has total disagreement. He doesn't believe that the only people who should be able to vote are like the people that are in the inside of the church. He believes that it should be expanded. Puritans don't like that. So this guy ends up leaving in 1636, takes 100 people. They establish a town called Hartford, which becomes the basis of later on the Connecticut colony. Cool. Threw him out. By the way, here's a pointer. If I ever ask you guys, what do Puritans like? Or do I say, do Puritans like this? Or do Puritans like that? All right. Unless I say Puritans, right? Unless I say, do Puritans like Puritans? The answer is no, they don't like it. All right. And if I ask you the question, do Puritans like Puritans? Then the question is kind of. That's the only answer. They're very stressed out people. So boom, Thomas Hooker, he leaves, he forms what's going to become Connecticut. Another guy, Roger Williams. This guy shows up in the colony. This guy's kind of a rock star in the Puritan movement. No one can believe that he's coming over there, like to this movement, because Puritans still primarily over in England. This guy shows up. People are like, whoa, it'd be like if Kanye came and played a concert, like, I don't know, like in the KUC. You'd be like, what? That's cool. I've heard he's coming, but I won't believe it till I see it. And then you're like, oh, he's here. Oh, no. Anyway, so this guy, Roger Williams, shows up. And he makes the mistake of being like, I can say things, right? Because I'm part of the church. Bad decision. He suggests a couple of changes. First of all, he's like, hey, I was thinking maybe we shouldn't torture people anymore. Just saying. Seems like if God is the one dispenses all the justice, that maybe we don't need to like do it ourselves. And in the end, like what we talk about, there'll be salvation or there'll be like punishment. Okay, cool. So maybe we shouldn't hurt people anymore. And the Puritans are like, we've never wanted to hurt somebody more actually right now than we do you, Roger Williams. Please don't say anything else. And then he says, you know what I was thinking? I was actually thinking too, you guys are horrible to the Native Americans around here. And I've actually been hanging out with them and I've learned some of their language and they're pretty smart and they have souls and they're like us. And the Puritans are like, oh, Roger Williams. And so he runs away. They're going to get him. He bolts out in the middle of winter of 1636. It's a hell of a time for leaving Massachusetts Bay that year. He bolts out, manages to get away. Middle of winter in Boston, outside Boston. This guy lives through the winter. Anybody want to take a swing based on what I just said, how it is that he's able to survive the winter?
Natives.
Yes. As it turns out, the people that have lived there and survived for generations know that place pretty well. It's mind-blowing, isn't it? Whereas the colonists are like, look at them doing things wrong. They don't plant anything. God grew all this corn. What are these guys doing over here? So he knows them. They help him make it through. He goes to another portion of New England and settles and creates a town called Providence, which is now the capital of Rhode Island. So it's funny because the Puritans actually themselves form one colony, but by being pretty awful to people, they managed to indirectly create two other colonies. There you go, Puritans. Good for you. Another person who gets banished, an interesting story, a woman named Anne Hutchinson, who was, I don't know if you've heard of her. She's pretty baller. She loves being in the Puritan movement. She wanted to go to Massachusetts Bay so bad. And when she first went to leave, this is the best part. When she first went to leave, she was like, I got to wait and give birth to like my 15th kid before I can go. And then she did. And she got on the boat and went over. I mean, it's not, she was a midwife, which midwives were women who, basically helps women give birth. Pretty remarkable people in a town. So she goes across, and when she gets to Massachusetts Bay, as you may expect a large percentage of from a population of people that move to the middle of nowhere on the cusp of a map for their faith, she starts feeling real into the spirit, and she decides she's going to start preaching. Okay, let's test that thing I taught you earlier. How do you think Puritans feel about a lady preacher? Not good at all. No, no, no. She gets more and more followers, and eventually they're like, "You're gone too." Bam! They kick her out, and she ends up going to Providence. It's really interesting the number of people that get kicked out of this area. But these are the guys who found Harvard, the Puritans. They established Boston. They set up Harvard. Like they leave their mark on so much. It's a really interesting legacy of this because the Puritans, remember I told you they're really into the Bible? That means they've all got to be literate. You don't think about that. But they really had a high focus on reading and learning to read and write so that they could actually directly engage the scripture. So there you go. Let's see. We get through this next one here. Now, again, in this area, you're going to see more confrontations with Native Americans. Already in 1637, this is if you guys don't know about this, this will blow your mind, I think. I remember when I learned about it. 1637, basically when the Puritans and Pilgrims and the settlers in the area get there, the most powerful Native American tribe are called the Pequot. And the Europeans show up, and after a while there's conflicts, and they realize, the Puritans and Europeans are good at this, they realize that the Pequot have a lot of enemies in the region that are smaller tribes. So they build alliances with them, and in 1637 this war breaks out. The New England colonies, this is the Puritans, the Pilgrims, the ones in the region, they ally with the Narragansett and the Mohegan tribes, which are smaller tribes, and they defeat the Pequot. But they don't just defeat them. Part of the end of that war and them surrendering requires that the word Pequot is outlawed, that no one shall ever speak that word again, that the history shall never be spoken of again, and that those who are surviving at the time will be divided up, sent off to live with other tribes where their history will be completely erased. That is insane. They tried to erase these people from history. And only through like basically subtle stories and family legacies of this story survive. And now the history has been brought back. But that tells you something. You never defeat somebody so much as if you make them not exist. I heard somebody once say that the time you truly die in this world is after the last time your name leaves the lips of a living human. That's why I always say, Dr. Sawyer, welcome to History 2010. There's a second war that goes down. These conflicts continue, but the final, basically the end of the Native American the end of the Native American presence in terms of power in the region comes in 1676, King Philip's War. I'll just leave you with this story. I think it's pretty fascinating here, both of these, but this one in particular. A lot of times when people imagine history, particularly conflicts between Europeans and Native Americans, they imagine the Europeans fighting with the best weapons, with guns, with rifles, whatever the newest thing is, and that on the other hand, you have Native Americans fighting with spears or bow and arrows and things like that. That, friends, not always the case. King Philip's War, which was basically 1675, there's an alliance of all of the Native American tribes. This guy, King Philip, his name is Metacom, it is his Native American name, but the Europeans call him King Philip. He brings together an alliance of the remaining bands of Native Americans in the region to essentially say, look, whatever we have different, this is our last chance. And they make a stand. The guy's pretty genius. The people who come over from Europe, and keep this in mind, if you are loaded and living high on the hog in Europe, you get on a boat to come to the other side of the world, you're doing fine. So mostly what you have in these early colonies are people that, have a little bit and are trying to get better off, and you have a lot of people that are poor. You have a lot of people who don't have a lot of money, right? Because this is an opportunity, but it's a high risk, high reward type of situation early on. So they don't have actually particularly good guns. What they have is what it's called a matchlock musket. Those of you guys that don't know, matchlock musket is basically you put the powder in the end of the barrel, you put the ball in there, and then you have a lighter, like basically a burning fuse there, that you light the thing, you stand back, you wait for it to go off, and it fires. They're heavy, they're slow to load. On top of that, you can't be too quick trying to reload these things because you remember I said you have a bag of gunpowder and fire near you. So if you play this wrong, you're not going to have arms or anything like that anymore. They're used generally for hunting. So that's what the Europeans have. But since these folks have migrated over, there's a new innovation that has become more available, and this is called a flintlock musket. And what this means is that in order to fire the gun, you don't have an open fire. What you have is like an explosive cap, and it hits when the hammer hits it, it creates a spark that ignites flame. And these guns are generally lighter. They are quicker to reload because there's no danger. And when that war, King Philip's War, goes down, what no one expected was that King Philip had worked kind of on the DL, trading with the English, but also with the Dutch, who were just to the south, acquiring enough of those guns to essentially come with an army that is far more equipped to fight a war than the European settlers. And when this war begins, the Native Americans rout early on. It's only at the very end of this war in 1676 that the English managed to get enough forces there to fight them back. But in the portion in the course of this war, in basically a year, 5% of the population of New England is killed. 5% of the entire population. Like right now in the United States, we have 300 million people, right? That would be like if 15 million people died in a war in a year, in terms of percentages now. This conquest that the Europeans pull off is bloody, but I also want you to know that it's not as simplistic as you often are led to believe, because Native Americans are smart. They got the same blood in their veins we do, same sense. It's not easy. So in the next one, we'll get to the Carolinas and the other colonies that were taken from us by Adobe's inability to let a MacBook charge. But hey, thank you guys for being in my class today. I really apologize for the errors. Thank you guys for sticking with me.